Today, we're going to do two very important things: improve our chess level and experience a great deal of enjoyment while we're at it. We'll do it by analyzing a game by Aaron Nimcevich himself, whom we frequently discussed and mentioned several times on the channel. He explains this game himself in one of his most famous and influential books, so it's very well annotated. We'll know exactly what he was thinking, and we can draw conclusions to apply later in our own games. What do you think? Sounds good, right? Nimzowitsch, in this case, was playing with the black pieces and played as defense. It's actually named after him, which is knight c6 against the move e4. As with practically all openings that don't occupy the center immediately, the most natural and correct reaction from our opponent should always be this move here, occupying the center with both pawns, the king's pawn and the queen's pawn. Now then, we can already fight for the center, and it's done with the move d5. I'm going to warn you that this opening is a bit unusual. This game was played over 100 years ago. That means the theory we know today wasn't exactly the same as it is now, right? So, the good thing about these games is that we're simply going to try to understand what they were doing. And it's going to surprise you, I assure you. The game continues as follows: White plays e5, closing the center a bit, and Nimzovich immediately attacks it with the f6 pawn. Well, it might seem like a very strange move, right? It's a very strange move. In fact, when I was looking at this game, reading it in the book, I was also very surprised. Normally, we don't want to move this pawn, nor do we want to attack a pawn chain at the tip. Normally, in this position, you attack at the base. But this knight on c6 is causing us a bit of trouble. And that's why Nimzovich, taking advantage of the fact that the white pieces are not fully developed yet, to directly attack this e5 point. Here, the best move without a doubt was f4. Why? To strengthen this beautiful point that the white pieces have here, the e5 point. With the move f4, it could simply continue like this if it's captured at some point. F takes e5, f takes e5, and white would still have this very good center, and they'd also have this diagonal free to attack the king. This would be the best continuation for the white pieces. However, the player with these pieces tried to make this move here, bishop b5. Very interesting. It indirectly defends this pawn. It's not defending it directly, but it's true that it's pinning the knight that's attacking it. So one piece attacks, one piece defends, and now this knight is no longer attacking. The game continues with bishop f5. White plays knight f3, and now, taking advantage of the fact that white hasn't captured this knight to double the pawns, then simply after knight f3, queen d7 is played. So if at any point white wants to capture, now the black queen would be the one to recapture on c6, and the position would be wonderful. The queen and bishop are targeting the c2 square. There's no strong counterplay on this side. If c3 were played, c5 would follow, and the black pieces would be in a very comfortable position. The game continues with c4, and this is where the instructive part of the game begins. Up to this point, they've been interesting moves. Yes, opening moves, development, we can draw many conclusions, but from here on, I assure you this will be a masterclass. So if you're doing anything else right now, focus closely on the game because you're definitely going to get a lot out of this for sure. Look at what Nimzovich does and how he understands it. He eliminates the knight on b1 with the bishop. You can't tell me this move isn't strange. In itself, it's a very strange move. It's breaking all the conventional rules. First, he's giving up his bishop pair, and it also seems to be his good bishop, since this other bishop is very hemmed in. Furthermore, he's trading a bishop that was already well developed on f5 for a knight that hadn't even moved yet. And why is this move so interesting? Well, Nimzovich understands something. He understands the following. This knight, at some point, let's put it here, would develop to c3, and from c3, it would be putting pressure on this point here, which is going to be extremely important in the game. Probably, at some point, this pawn, or these two pawns, will be exchanged, and the d5 hole will be easily exploitable for a knight. If the knight on c3 doesn't exist, then no one will be able to fight for these central squares. So look at what an interesting maneuver. Bishop takes b1, rook takes b1, and here Nimzovich castles queenside. It makes perfect sense. Not only does he move the king away from this weakness he's created, especially on this light square diagonal, but also the queen, bishop, and knight start to pressure this file that will eventually open up. The game continues with pawn takes pawn. The white pieces are definitely making the right decision to capture here, because if they choose to close this center, let's say if they prematurely shut down their own attack, then black could simply try to create some very effective counterplay on this flank. This would likely happen with the aggressive move g5, allowing them to launch a direct attack against white's kingside, which we already know is exactly where they are planning to castle into very soon. We have a lot of information. Since the rook is moved, they won't be able to castle queenside, so we know they'll castle kingside. So white captures this pawn here, a very good move. Queen takes d5. And now, if you look closely, we're attacking this pawn with the queen, knight, and rook with three pieces, and it was only defended by two. Can it be defended? Well, it seems very difficult to defend. If they try to play, for example, this move here, they would be losing the bishop. Therefore, there's no way to save the bishop and the pawn. So there's only one way then, which is bishop takes knight. And look at what Nimzowitsch has achieved. Eliminating the knight that was tentatively going to go to c3 and eliminating the light squared bishop. Therefore, the d5 square is going to be a very strong square, and it's going to be ours. He'll play e6, knight d7, and then knight d5. And simply, this knight will be the master of the position. Furthermore, we find this d4 pawn, which isn't an isolated pawn, but it could be treated as such because neither the c pawn nor the e pawn will ever be able to defend it. And therefore, this pawn is going to be a weakness for the entire game. Well, when we have these types of positions, we have to stop for a moment and analyze. And look at the analysis I'm going to give you. We have an outpost on d5, a very good thing for us. We have this isolated pawn, quote unquote, on d4. Easy to attack because the column in front is semi-open. If this column were closed, it wouldn't be a weakness. So we already have two good things, but of course there are also things against us, as always. The first is that the C file will be easily utilized by white's rooks. They're going to attack the queen, they're going to attack the king, and above all, they're also going to attack this f7 point, c7, excuse me, which will be extremely weak. It can be attacked from the front. Also, in exchange for leaving, this outpost on d5, white is going to have an outpost on c5 as well, which, while not as powerful, is also something to keep in mind. Probably this knight can be recycled and reach c5 at some point in the position. Very well, the game continues like this. Now we've seen the analysis and we've understood what was happening. Important for continuing with the game. Short castling on white's part. And now, what's our plan? Well, start developing these pieces and they can't come out. Without making this move, e6. It would be a mistake for all of you watching me to capture this pawn here because we would simply capture with the g pawn, we'd open the g file to attack the king, and honestly, I wouldn't want to be the white pieces here because this king is going to suffer a lot. So it's obvious that white doesn't want to capture this point here. The game continues with bishop e3, developing their last piece, knight e7, the knight is already heading towards its objective, which is to place itself on d5, from where it'll be doing great attacking the whole position, and won't be able to be attacked, and furthermore, it'll also be defending this very weak point, which we must keep defended. Remember well, a plan could be to place the queen on e2, double rooks on the c file, and this is going to start being quite dangerous. It's clear, right? The game indeed continues with queen e2. Knight to d5, very well placed. White shouldn't worry about moving this bishop because the knight is actually much better than the bishop on e3. That's obvious at a glance. The good thing about this outpost is that there's only one piece on the whole board that can eliminate it, and it's this knight right here. And since it's on a diagonal with a square in between, it'll need 4 moves to come and attack. Therefore, they practically won't be able to dislodge it from this outpost. The Frick moves to c1. We had already anticipated this, right? They attack our queen, we simply move it away. And now, after this rook to c4, where white's intentions are clearly seen, doubling on the c file or even tripling with the queen, and so here we must do an exercise. In prophylaxis, since we already know the opponent's plan, let's do a piece projection exercise. And imagine we had a magic hand that could take any piece we want and place it wherever we want. We'd love to do the following: place this king here and this rook that's doing nothing here, so that this would be fabulous. We'd be defending the cause 7 point without any trouble. They can attack us now and there'd be no problem. If things get complicated, we can even play c6, and besides, all the rooks would be fulfilling a role. This one defends, this one attacks the outpost, it also defends ours, and we'd see where we'd place this bishop. But this would be a visualization exercise, where we project where we want to go in the future. Therefore, we already know how to start. King debate, what an interesting game. I recommend you save it and watch it as many times as you need, because it's extremely interesting. After this king to b8, white plays queen to d2, probably to try and enter through the queen side. We continue with our plan. This rook was placed over here. Now the only thing left is to move the bishop and place the other rook, and we'd have our move, or rather our plan, completed. Knight to e1. White's plan is obvious. To bring this knight to the outposts they have on the c5 square. We said it a moment ago. That's why it's very good in a game to try and understand the plans of both sides. Our plan is obvious, we already know it. We move the bishop, and now what are we missing? Well, obviously bringing the other rook, and we've actually set up the position we wanted. Queen to c2, and now comes the next exercise. We have the defense completely set up. They can do whatever they want now. They won't be able to attack us. The only file they have to attack is the c file, and when they triple up, we can even play c6 and nothing happens here. Our knight is also helping to defend, so now we want to close everything up. 5. Look what an interesting move. It closes off possible exchanges, and they're already projecting themselves to be able to launch an attack and go against the enemy king. Honestly, the game is already looking very good for the black pieces here. They've defended well. You can't attack me. They've closed the center, so there are no breaks in the middle either. The only one there was this one, and now the one who's attacking, and boy is he attacking, is the player with the black pieces. And here we go, rook c1, and black is already pushing forward with g5, right? Well, let's see what white does. Knight c5, they move into the outpost. Can they do anything to us? Let's see. Honestly, this knight is extremely annoying. There's an exchange. We have to ask ourselves what's better, this knight or this bishop? To me, honestly, it seems like there's no contest, right? This knight is attacking the queen, it's attacking this impressive point right here, and this bishop does nothing. It's just here so it doesn't get in the way. So there's no doubt, bishop takes knight, right? If they capture with the pawn, that really wouldn't be a good idea. Let's assume they capture with the pawn. We could simply continue by eliminating this bishop, and now look at the situation white is left with. These two doubled and isolated pawns, horrible and super easy to attack, and this endgame practically wins itself. I'm going to put the pieces back. So here, after bishop takes knight, they must capture with the rook. Very well. Plus, they'd be closing off the file, right? If they capture with the pawn, all right, they can't do anything to us. I want to attack, so here I go. Rook g1, rook g8 rather, to try and attack with our pawns. The queen comes to the defense via e2. And now look at this very interesting move. h5, the pawn is being given away. Would it be a good idea to take it? Now, besides opening lines for the rook attack, a very simple plan like advancing this pawn and placing the rook on the h-file, and this queen would suffer a lot. I'm not saying it's going to be lost, but it would suffer a lot. So this attack would also be opening up over here, therefore taking this pawn doesn't seem like a good idea at all. The white player decides not to take it, he's right to do so, and moves his bishop away, so that now this bishop looks toward both flanks. He's already seeing the avalanche of pawns coming toward the king. I wouldn't like to be white in this case. So what he also does is try to find some kind of counterplay. If he stays still, he's gonna lose. That's more than clear. The game continues this way. H4, there it goes. White does the same. They don't stay still. A4. The game continues with G4 and watch out, A5. What would you do? Would you keep attacking or would you stop this attack? Without a doubt, this pawn has to be stopped. If we don't stop it and, for example, we launch this other pawn, excuse me, a move like A6 would be quite dangerous. They would force us to advance this pawn and we'd already be creating too many weaknesses. They would come in with the rooks and this would be extremely dangerous. It's more prudent that you want to advance on me, you want to launch a counterattack. Look how easy, a 6, and you can't do anything else. It's true, you have a very obvious plan. Throwing this pawn at me to open everything up, but if you throw this pawn at me, which is actually what the white pieces did, well, simply, what do I do now? Well, I play c6. I close the file, and you can't advance anymore because I have two pawns completely defending the b5 break square. You know what? White has run out of attack. How do they do it? They can't do anything anymore. So what? You wanted to attack me through here? I'll stop it calmly. There's no rush. I have everything well placed, just like at the beginning. And now I go on the attack. And now this attack really is dangerous, not this pawn that was being thrown down the side. Black has done things right. Rook b1, not with the idea of launching through here, but now the rook wants to move to the third rank to come and defend. It can't here because of the knight. If the rook comes to b1 now, it could join the defense. Queen f7, rook b3, and now, well, here comes the missing pawn. After queen e4, we must think about which of the three pawns to advance. And this is a calculation exercise, right? And also strategic. If you want, you can pause the video and try to think which one you would choose. Let me explain. The most powerful one to advance now is this one here, f3. Good move. And it's clearly understood, if this pawn captures, this would be a mistake. Because after pawn takes pawn, the file opens up, and this is going to be a complete disaster. So capturing is not a good option, and advancing isn't either, because then after pawn takes pawn and pawn takes pawn, the H file opens up and the attack will be lethal, since there's no way for the pieces to move to defend this flank here. Therefore, the best option white has here is neither to take nor to advance, but to stay still. And what they do is they move toward the defense. But, well, this allows us to open lines, which is exactly what we want to do. Open lines for our rooks so they directly attack the white king. So, look, let's bring the other rook to the attack now, the one missing to join the party. They defend correctly. There was a threat of entering through here with the queen with a lot of force, and now it needs to be done. Open lines. Which pawn are we going to push with? With the middle one. If we push with the h1, we'd be closing the position a bit. And although we'd surely win the game, it would be much harder to break in. If we play the g pawn, they can't avoid the pawn exchange, because we're attacking two pawns at once. Therefore, after pawn takes pawn 2, h takes g3, what we're seeing now is that it wouldn't be possible to capture here because the rook would be lost. Instead, white closes with f4, but it's clearly seen that now the king is quite exposed to attacks. He's very exposed here on his own flank. Which piece isn't attacking? The queen and the two rooks are. This knight here has already fulfilled its role. How about we move it here? So how is this done? Well, we pull the knight back for a moment, and now we simply bring it to the 5 square, another outpost. See how simple that is? Rook h1, trying to take control of his file, and now the finish is simple. We're going to bring all the pieces into the attack. There were surely several ways to finish it, but Ninzevich did it in this very elegant way. Rook g4, and even if this pawn is lost, it doesn't matter at all, because here, first of all, we could already exchange pieces, which would be very interesting, but the thing is, it wouldn't be the most accurate. Let me explain. If knight takes now, white could become active on the 7th rank thanks to the queen. They'd be attacking our queen. I don't like it much. We could do it in a much more refined way, right? So in this case, first queen g6, putting pressure on the pin on this bishop. It's impossible to defend. We have 3 pieces attacking it. And besides, when we capture, the rook's entry on the 7th rank is no longer an option, right? After this queen e1, trying to defend this bishop, knight takes bishop. It's the rook from the third rank that comes to capture it. And even though we're equal on material, actually, we're down a pawn, but we're gonna win it back now. We're completely equal on material. However, the positional difference is huge, and Nimzowitz won in very few moves. Look, the rook moves to h3, and simply now, rook takes d4, we start collecting pawns. We collect the first one, exchange of rooks, and now we simply come in with the queen to give check. The king has to move away because it's not in white's interest to trade pieces, and we simply collect the next pawn. That's two extra pawns now. Two pawns up, if we manage to trade the major pieces, it's clear that black wins this king endgame easily, right? They bring the king over here, and this pawn's gonna promote. And if they manage to stop it, well, we'll just take these two and simply win the game. So after these couple of moves, defending everything, and now this pawn here is going to be captured, the white pieces decided to resign the game. Don't tell me this game hasn't been very instructive. Well then, what do I recommend? Watch it as many times as you need to. Very important. If everything was clear after one time, then that's it. I also recommend that you study using apps. The one I always use is ChessMind. You have it down here in the description. There are several with the same name. The best one is the one I'm leaving you down here in the description, which is the one with the best features for studying openings, for studying the middle game, for studying positional play, quizzes, problems, tactics. It's all there. It's the one I use. Careful, it has paid versions, but it also has a very good free version, okay? I'm gonna leave it for you down here in the description. I hope you loved this video as much as I loved recording it. These games are one of those beautiful games where you learn so much. Leave a big thumbs up if you liked it, and for all of you who are channel subscribers, we'll see you tomorrow in the next video, friends. Goodbye!